Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Talk It Out Tuesday. It's your girl C.A. Knuble, and today I have a new member of the team to introduce to you guys that I'm pretty excited about. Who's going to help me run Talk It Out Tuesdays today? His name is Sean. How are
Hey,
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So, do you want to tell everybody a little about yourself and your work in mental health?
Yes. So my name is Sean. I live in Alaska. Um, yeah, that's why I'm like super pasty. um, but yeah, I live in Alaska. I've lived here since 2017. I recently, well, within the past 3 years, started working on my sobriety, started working on my recovery journey. And in that, there's no better way to work on yourself than to give back to your community. So I ended up getting certified as a peer support specialist in the state of Alaska, which is everyone's like, "Oh, you're a counselor, right?" No, I'm not a counselor. I use my lived experience to help other people that are in recovery and help other people that are walking the journey that I've walked before and continue to walk. And that encompasses mental health as well as sobriety. So I found that a lot of my problems were mental, were the mental part, not the substance. The substance was just a byproduct of what I was going through in my life. So yeah, I kind of searched online and I ran into in a CA and next thing I know I'm here.
I'm so grateful you are. I'm excited about it. So, I have the topic of control for today, and I did do it live on Instagram, but I kind of wanted you to take the reins on this one. And
Hmm.
I'll fall back, and then when you're ready for me, wait for me. I'll be in the background because I kind of want people to get accustomed to the way that you run things. So,
Okay, sweet.
right. So, floor is yours.
All right. So Boston Soul says good evening. Well, good evening to you too. Good afternoon to you. So control, and I'll get into the talking points here in a second, but control to me in my whole life has been kind of a wild thing, right? Or a wild ride. Because I always thought if I was in control of everything, like that everything would be fine, right? I was in control of myself, I was in control of my thoughts, I was in control of my surroundings, that everything would be fine. Getting into recovery and starting actually working on my mental health, I realized that there's actually not a lot that I can control. Right? I can't control what other people do. Can't control how other people feel. I can't control how other people take what I say. The only thing that I can really control is my actions. I can control how what I say and how I respond to people and how I present myself. And that's really all that I can control in this life, and it's wild, right? Because we think that we have so much control over everything, but in reality, we really don't. So, uh, getting into some of these things, we think, at least for me, I know that I thought, like I said, that I could control my thoughts, right? And I looked at myself and I said, what really in my brain and the space of my brain am I able to actually control? And it was very, very difficult for me to actually sit down and come with an actual answer of what can I control within this thing. And the reality is there was nothing. There was unwanted thoughts, there was unwanted images that came in my brain that played off of trauma. And those were really the intrusive thoughts, the intrusive images that came in there. And really what I had to do is sit and pause and really let that play out and say, these intrusive thoughts either benefiting me, or how are they destructive to my purpose in life? So getting into those intrusive thoughts and really thinking about those, and some of them spawn from an emotion, right? Everything that we do in life spawns from a feeling, which leads, or spawns from an emotion, right? We have an emotion, and once you start peeling back the onion, to say, we have feelings, we have emotions, and so the feelings are derived from emotions, and there's five core emotions, I believe. There's a few more, but most of the time we run to a feeling, right, based off of an emotion. So for me, when I was in the army, I'm a veteran. I was in the Army 12 and a half years. They always told us get angry, right? They said, whatever you do, get angry. If you're running, get angry. If you're on deployment in a firefight, get angry. If you're doing whatever, get angry. And so all these intrusive thoughts that I had about anger and about being angry spawned from somewhere, and there was a birthplace to that. And so really I had to dig into myself and find out why those thoughts were coming in and where everything spawned from, right? So the feeling is attached to the emotion. And so once I said, okay, how am I feeling? First, this thought, what is this thought coming in to my brain? What does it actually mean? And why am I feeling this way? Okay, so the feeling that I have is anger. I know that. So pulling back that onion, what is the emotion attached to it? And I found out that most times, most of my emotions were negative in manner, right? I found it hard to be happy. I found it hard to be positive, and that was a control factor for me, because nothing that I had control over, I was able to actually control myself. So the intrusive thoughts for me was really getting to the core of how I believed my life was, and where I'm headed to, and why the emotion is attached to it. So like I said, I started working really hard on myself, working on changing my thought patterns, right? Because I believe that, hey, I could change the way that I thought. I had control over that, and I really couldn't. So really, like I said, when I get to these points where I start to get angry, it still happens, guys. I'm not perfect. I'm a human being, and I don't get it right 100% of the time, and I'll be the first to admit that. I have my faults and I have my failures, but failures lead to success. And so when I get to those points where I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I don't know why I'm thinking the way that I'm thinking, I really start to try and work on that thought pattern, right? And change the thought pattern. When I change the thought pattern, it's crazy, right? Because I sit with the thought that comes in, right? So like, let's say I'm upset and I'm angry, and I sit with that thought. That thought comes in that says, nobody wants you, nobody loves you, nobody cares. And I start to really dissect those thoughts, right? Okay, nobody wants me, nobody loves me, nobody cares. All right, so I let that come in and I let that flood me, right? And then I start to sit down and really think, okay, nobody wants me. Well, why do I feel, why is my brain telling me nobody wants me? Okay, well, it's X, Y, and Z. Well, really, those are lies. All those X, Y, and Z's are lies. And I said, okay, nobody loves me. Well, what does that mean, nobody loves me? Why is this intrusive thought, coming into my brain? And there's X, Y, and Z. And I look at X, Y, and Z and I say, I identify those as lies because it's not true. And then nobody cares. Well, I've had a pattern in the past of people showing that they didn't care, so that can be true. But currently where I'm at, I have a lot of people that care. And even then I had a lot of people that cared. I just didn't care to know how they felt about me. So I take those intrusive thoughts and I start discrediting those, right? And I start saying, okay, this is not true, this is not true, and this is not true, and this is why it's not true. So it would look like, nobody wants you, nobody loves you, nobody cares. Okay, well, let's sit with this. Let's feel that, that gut, that grime, that nasty shit that we all feel, right? And let me sit with that for a second. Okay, well, why does nobody love me? Well, people do love you. It's just sometimes not the people that we want to love us. And then, okay, nobody cares about me. Well, there's people that care about me, and I know that for a fact. I know that to be true. So then I go into nobody wants me. Well, I mean, that's untrue. I'm married. Somebody wants me. At least one person wants me. And then so from that point, I start changing the way that I start thinking. That's control. I introduce new thoughts into my brain and repeat those over and over again. And those are words of affirmation, right? I am loved. I am wanted. I am cared for. And I repeat those until I start believing it, right? We start a pattern of behaviors over and over and over again. And we continue these behaviors over and over again, where we start to introduce positive affirmations into our life, right? Instead of saying, I'm a piece of shit. Well, no, I'm not. I'm valued. I have value in this world. And then we start changing the thought and the way that our brain reacts to certain things. And that's really how I start to work on doing that. So some of the troubling thought patterns that we include is ruminating or looping thoughts, like continuously having those, which is what I just talked about. Negative self-talk. Negative self-talk is very destructive, super destructive, right? So if we start getting into this negative self-talk and we start putting ourselves down, then we start believing it, right? So it can start something. It can start something so small as I'm ugly, right? And then you start to believe that you're ugly, and then you start to act like you're ugly, and then you start to present yourself as being ugly. Or I'm a piece of shit. Like I said before, I used to think that of myself. I used to say, I'm a piece of shit. So therefore, I fed myself that so many times. I manipulated myself so much that I started to believe that I was a piece of shit. And I started acting like a piece of shit and presenting myself like a piece of shit, because that's how I felt about myself. And taking that negative self-talk and turning it into positive self-talk is something absolutely stunning and beautiful. And absolutely 100. Yep. And so next is cognitive biases or errors in thinking that we can affect our choices or interactions. I can't control the fact that I interact with certain people, right? There's going to be positive interactions. There's going to be negative interactions. But the only thing that I have control over is how I interact with people, right? So if I ran into CA and she was just having a bad day and like she snapped at me, I could be like, well, you know what? Fuck you too. Like, but that's not going to improve the situation, right? That's not going to fix the interaction that we have, and it's actually going to dampen our relationship. It can dampen relationships. It can dampen everything around you. It can bring all of that hard work that you did and come crashing down, and it's very destructive. So really being able to look at a certain situation, look past the situation, is going to be able to help out a lot, right? So if CA is having a bad day, right, and she said she was like, snapped at me, I could look past it and say, it's not about me. I had nothing to do with it. I was just a byproduct. I was just there. I was the person in front of her. Not saying that she would do that, but it's it happens. It happens all the time. And that's why when people have road rage up here, like road rage is pretty bad. Not bad as in like other places, but it's pretty bad up here. I have to look past the fact that somebody is angry on the road and they're flipping me out, or, flipping me off. If I'm driving the speed limit and they want to go a little bit faster, or they're screaming out their window at me, like, that has nothing to do with me. Maybe they had a shit day. Maybe they didn't have their coffee in the morning. Maybe they just found out that, somebody that was close to them passed away. That has nothing to do with me. I'm just there. I'm in the way of them, going on this path. So being able to look past that person's, what they're presenting to you and meet them where they're at and treat them with respect and dignity. Respect and dignity goes a long way, people. Like, long way. And I feel like that's one of the things that we're lacking in society is respect and dignity, and it starts with us. We can control how we respect and dignify people. So then, the next one is a fixed pessimistic outlook. Everything is always bad all the time. That's core 101. If we start looking at life as just this dismal thing that we're living in and nothing can go right, we're gonna live in that, right? What you what you reap is what you sow, right? So if you sow negative, you're going to get negative in return. If you sow positivity in your life, you're going to reap it and droves, right? And this has been proven time and time again. You can change your outlook on life, and you can say, okay, today is going to be awesome, and no matter what happens, shit's going to get better. You're going to have terrible things happen all day, but your perspective on life changes when you start looking at things in a positive light. Like, instead of looking at something like saying, oh shit, I got into a car accident today and it was bad, and like I'm not injured, but it was bad, and now I have to look at my insurance and this, that, and the third. We can look at it as this is a life lesson, knowing that I have to abide by the speed limits, watch the road, what have you. Everything is a life lesson that we encounter in life, and it's how we look at it and how we receive it is how we will go about it. I know sometimes it's hard to believe that everything in life is a lesson, but it really is. Going to the next one, identifying specific thoughts and patterns that can help you make the most out of other tips, out of the other tips that follow. And some of those is accepting those unwanted thoughts. But I talked about that earlier. If we push away those unwanted thoughts, right, and we say, well, I don't want to hear that because I just don't want to deal with it, right? If we push them away and we continue to push them away, we're not going to know how to handle them when they actually come, and we cannot stop it, right? If we shut down mentally and emotionally and spiritually, and we say, all right, I'm not dealing with the negative stuff, what happens when something negative actually happens? You have to know how to handle it and how to sit with it and feel that, right? There's a good feeling, or there's a good saying in the mental health field: feel the feelings, and it's scary because it's feelings. Feel the emotions. Scary because it's emotions, but it's real. Those are real things. You, as a human being, have separate sets of emotions than I do. I can't say that, that CA knows exactly how I'm feeling, and she would feel the same way as I would be feeling. That's not realistic. We all have our own way that we process things, and so really sitting with that and dealing with that and handling it is appropriate. Instead of when those nasty feelings and emotions come on, or you start to feel angry or feel worked up, meditation. And I absolutely love meditation. I may not look like I love meditation because I got a beard and because I look like a crazy wild man or a biker. I've been called biker. I've been called wild man. I've been called a garden gnome. But the reality is, I love meditation. I absolutely love meditation. Anytime that I start to feel a negative emotion, not all the time, not like every single time, but when I start to have these overwhelming feelings and these overwhelming thoughts that I cannot stop, I sit down and I meditate. I will put music on, I'll put ASMR on, I'll put guided meditation on, and it takes me from out here and brings me into here. It helps me be present. It helps me be accountable for myself, and really start to work on some of those things. And then, it's scary to do it the first time, right? Because a lot of us have a hard time focusing on that one thing, right? And that one thing is focusing on focus. That's weird, right, to say, but being able to take all that outside noise that's happening and push it all away and focus on you. Now, there's different forms of meditation that you can do. There's guided meditation where somebody guides you through it. They talk you through the process, the breathing, the deep breathing, body scans. They talk you through everything, and it's really, really awesome when you get to that meditative state where nothing around you matters. And I'm not saying matters isn't like the house could burn down and I'm not paying attention, but nothing can affect you, right? Nothing can affect you in a negative manner. There's also meditation, like Buddhist monks and stuff like that. They meditate like for hours, and I used to do that, but when I start to meditate for hours, then I start to get really tired. So weird trade-off, right? But anyways, meditation is a great way to relax and change your perspective. You could change your perspective. It's called cognitive reappraisal. And we talked about that, changing your thought process from today sucks to today is going to be better. Changing the way that we approach certain things can mean the world to the next situation, right? So we are creatures of habit. So if we start running these habits where we walk up to people and we're positive and we're nice and we're caring and we're giving, we're empathetic, in return we're going to receive that, right? And then so it's going to be easier for the next time. And it may not be every single time that you're going to receive what you're giving, but the more times you do it, the more likely you are to receive that back in return, right? So we're creatures of habit. And sometimes we do things out of benefit. Like, I'm going to be nice to this person because I want somebody to be nice to me. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But when we start to do it out of the genuineness of our heart, and we start to say, okay, I want to be empathetic because I am empathetic. And I want to be nice to somebody because I am nice. And I want to be kind and caring to people because that's who I am naturally in my heart. Then the rewards are so much better than when you expect things in return. So doing that, approaching a situation, being completely positive and being completely transparent and open and honest, and saying, here this is. And we're going to talk about boundaries a little bit later on. But in the trust factor and in being empathetic and nice and caring and kind, you need boundaries. And we'll talk about that in a second. Focus on the positives. Absolutely. There's always a silver lining to everything. Sometimes we can't see the silver lining, right? Sometimes the silver lining is hidden by another cloud. So we have to get past that initial cloud to get to the silver lining. I know that for me, I didn't get much sleep last night. I got 4 hours of sleep. I woke up this morning. I was like, shit, I didn't sleep very much. I'm going to be super tired. And then I started focusing on, okay, well, yeah, I'm tired. Yeah, I don't feel great. I don't feel the greatest. Yeah, my eyes are barely wide open, but the silver lining is that I get music therapy a little bit later on, which I did probably 2 hours ago. And I get to come and talk to you guys on this podcast, and I get to interact with CA, and I get to interact with people, and I get to hang out just for a little bit, offer a little bit of my brain and my thought process to people in hopes that maybe it can help somebody along the way. There's always a silver lining, even in some of the bad stuff. Guided imagery, visualizing positive scenarios that can help promote a calm state of mind. That's called in recovery for addiction, and it's called playing the tape out, right? So we look at different scenarios. We play the tape out, right? So if there's a good scenario, we play the tape out, right? So it would look like, okay, I decided to go shopping today even though I didn't want to play out the tape. Well, okay, the play out the tape is I'm going to go get food, and then I'm going to come back home. Reality says that I'm going to come back home and be able to unpack this and relax. My brain tells me I'm going to go home and then I'm not going to be able to relax. But the likelihood is I'm going to be able to relax because that's one less thing off the checklist that I can do. You can play the tape through it in any scenario, even bad scenarios. You can say, okay, I got a ticket today while I was driving. What is the most likely scenario? What is the most unlikely scenario? And our brain's going to take us always to the most extreme unlikely scenario that happens. Like, I'm going to go pay for this ticket and I'm going to get arrested. That's not really likely, right? Unless you have charges. Or it could look like I'm going to go and I'm going to pay this, and it's going to suck for a little bit financially, depending on how much it is and how much I make. But that's one less thing that's going to be off of my plate later on because some of the things could happen. So it's about playing out the tape, the most likely and the most extreme, because our brain plays the most extreme cases on us sometimes. Writing it out. I'm not a journaling kind of person. I bought a notebook that has been sitting here for ages, and I'm like, it would be great to write something down, and I can't do it. And it's not that I can't physically, it's I just forget. So I process a lot of things. But what I have found, when I've been in a few inpatient treatments, and I found that writing out my thoughts prior to actually speaking them will give me a better way to communicate, right? And I can communicate more effectively if I write them down, especially if I'm communicating with somebody that I care about. I've had to communicate a very tough emotion and feeling to my ex-wife, and that was hard because every time before then I had beat the brick wall. You know, I'd said what I needed to say and how I wanted to say it, and she just wasn't receiving it. And that's okay. That's not on me. That's on her. So I took it and I wrote it down. I said, okay, word for word, this is what I want to say and how I feel and why I'm feeling the way that I do. And so I did that. And I actually had a counselor read it. I had multiple people read it prior to me presenting it to her. When I presented it to her, it was no different. But I was able to express how I felt and what the emotions were attached with that to an exact T. And writing that out releases a lot of pent up stress and pent up feelings and emotions, right? So the hardest thing is putting pen to paper, because sometimes we don't like what we write. We don't like the way we feel because it is negative. But when you start to write that out, and I tell this to a lot of people that I talk to that are saying, I've tried everything. I've tried counseling. I've tried this, tried that, tried this, tried that. I said, write it out. Dude, you've got a pen and a piece of paper. Write it out. Sit down and just write those feelings. It doesn't even have to be a paragraph. It can just be words. Like literally, I'm mad. I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm in pain. Write that out. Because once you start to write that out, it takes the power away from that feeling and that emotion, right? It takes it's like you spill water on the counter and you got a Bounty quicker picker upper, right? And you just throw it on there and it absorbs that. And it starts taking away some of the sting and some of the anger and some of the pain. So writing it out is really awesome. And for people like me, I like I said, I find it easier to communicate more effectively if I write it out and I'm able to read it. And so that makes everything a little bit easier. So yeah, maybe I should start writing it out a little bit more so I can communicate a little bit more effectively. And then next is focus distractions. A great way to increase productivity. Some include spending time with loved ones, listening to calming or uplifting music, taking a walk. Just be sure it's being used as a temporary break, not as an avoidance, right? So a lot of times we do get in these scenarios where we need to have a distraction. We need something to take us away from what is bothering us. So whether it's we're in a dispute with a loved one, we are in a dispute with ourselves, we're in a dispute with a coworker, we're not feeling the greatest. Having a distraction, being able to pull away from that and say, okay, I just need a break. That's okay. And I know society has told us it's not okay to take a break in an argument or a disagreement with a significant other because you don't want to go to bed angry. You don't want to go to bed angry because you're going to have a bad night's sleep, right? But if you are continuously over and over and over again harming yourself with these negative feelings, and then having an argument with somebody and you or a disagreement with somebody and you continue on that path of negative feeling, you're going to have a hard time pulling yourself up out of it. So stepping away is perfectly fine. And it's actually encouraged. My counselor says, dude, if you have any issues and you need to step away, just say, hey, look, I need to take a break, go for a walk, listen to some music, what have you. But don't make it to a point where you are avoiding the situation. There's a lot of people that say, oh, I've got to step away. I can't talk about this. And every time you go to approach it, I can't talk about it. That is control. That is controlling. That is controlling the situation, right? Where every time that person wants to talk about how they're feeling and how it is presented to them that their feelings don't matter, and you say, I just don't want to talk about it, it's more damaging. So do not avoid. Use that as a coping skill to walk away and get yourself into clear mind. And plus, who wants to communicate when you're angry? Because you say some shit that you don't mean. You hear some shit that you don't want to hear. And we all say and do things that we don't mean in the moment of anger or discourse. So stepping away and really being able to center yourself and bring yourself back in, reel yourself back in, is going to be more beneficial because you can communicate more effectively, and you can have control over yourself, because sometimes anger leaves us uncontrollable. It's reality. And work on managing stress. Whew, that is a huge one. And before I get into some of the hit points there, managing stress is hard because a lot of our stress has to do with a lot of what we have around us, right? A lot of the mundane, normal things that we do. A lot of times our jobs are a cause of stress, our relationships, finances. There's some things that we cannot control in that, right? I can't control how much my wife works. I'm medically retired. I'm 100% disabled from the VA. I'm not allowed to work, but I can't control how much my wife works. She works about anywhere from 14 to 16 hours a day, and it sucks. But the reality is that she can request time off. She can say, "Hey, look, I need a mental health day," which they're allowed to take. And it's on her to do that. I can't be the one that says, "You need to take a break." She's the only person that can do that. So really managing the stress, all I can do is be vocal about how much, it bothers me to see her in so much pain, so much mental anguish, so much emotional anguish when she comes home. Managing the manageable stress is what it's going to be. Stress in relationships, it takes two people to work on a relationship. It takes two people to be in an okay place. But you have to manage your mental health in order to start working on yourself as a couple, or you as a couple. So stress and anxiety are fuel for unwanted thoughts. Absolutely. Take back control by managing your stress. A big part of practicing is self-care. Self-care is huge. I do self-care a lot because I can't help others if I can't help myself, and I cannot take care of others if I can't take care of myself. And that is a lot of what a lot of people are missing. They work, and they don't take care of themselves. They stretch themselves thin, and then they can't take care of themselves, and then they're not happy. There's intrusive thoughts like, I give so much to everybody, why is nobody giving me anything in return? Well, the reality is you're not giving yourself anything in return. You're doing for other people, but you're not doing for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. People think that it's selfish to take care of yourself, and it's not. Because you can't take care of anybody else if you can't take care of yourself. And so I preach self-care to the day that I die. Because self-care is very important when it comes to mental health work, when it comes to any work in general. Self-care, taking care of yourself. Some forms of self-care can be getting quality sleep, eating nourishing food, social connection, asking for help when needed, and making time to relax. We're going to hit on some of these points. Sleep. I know that I said I got like 4 hours of sleep last night. Sometimes I get anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. It all depends. But you need sleep. We all need sleep. Sleep is huge because it's not just, I'm going to sleep. I don't have to deal with this, right? That was one of my ways of coping when I was a kid, was going to sleep. I didn't have to worry about it. But sleep, there's so much more that goes into sleep. If you have you have a brain injury, it helps recover your brain. It also helps recover your brain from stress. It helps recover your body when you're absolutely beat. It helps recover your body. You may wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I'm so sore, but being sore is helping your body recover. So getting sleep, putting your body at rest for an extended period of time, getting that sleep, letting your body recycle is perfect. They say that you need an average of 8 hours of sleep, and it all depends on the person, really. Food. Oh, man. Nourishing food. Getting on a good diet and actually sticking to that diet is going to help you out a lot, because a lot of the way that we eat as humans, and even as Americans, is not very healthy, right? Going to McDonald's and going to get a parfait is not necessarily as healthy as going to a Whole Foods store and buying the product to make your parfait yourself. I don't even know if McDonald's has parfaits anymore. I was just saying. That shows my age. I have gray in my beard, guys. Anyways, the way that we eat in America is super unhealthy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not, it's not beneficial to us. And so, building that that healthy. I always say still had parfait, right? Those are good. Parfaits are good. So, anyways, really getting down, eating the proteins, eating red meats, that helps. And I know a lot of people saying red meats because it could be vegan, it is what it is, but eating something that is good for you and good is going to help you. On top of that, I cook almost every night for my family, and I love cooking for my family because I delight in, and I find joy in the look on their face when they eat what I have to cook. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's one of the most beautiful things that I get to do is cook for my family and see them enjoy what I'm cooking. Now, it's not all the time that they enjoy what I'm cooking because they're picky in what they have, but a majority of the time they enjoy my cooking because it tastes good. And sometimes it's good for them, sometimes it's unhealthy, but it's good. So eating good food releases endorphins. It's kind of crazy how that happens. Going next to it is social connections. I find it easier to be by myself and kind of hermit myself away, but that's not always the case. I do enjoy being around people. I enjoy the human interaction. That's why on TikTok I go live and I talk to people. I enjoy the human connection because there's a level of human connection that we all miss. And we all missed it because of the pandemic. A lot of us grew to be more comfortable by ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with being comfortable by ourselves. But when we start sheltering away and finding it easier not to deal with people than it is to go out into society and hang out. We all have a social group that we hang out as long as it's beneficial to us and beneficial to other people. Those social groups are most interactive and most needed, especially when you're going through some shit. Asking for help when needed. Woo, that's a huge one, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I can't speak for women. I know for men, it is super hard to ask for help, right? I know when I first started working on myself, it was so hard to ask for help of any sort, whether it was financial, mental, emotional, just somebody to be there to talk to. It was really hard to ask for that help because I didn't want to be looked at as weak. I didn't want to be looked at as less than. I had an image to uphold, and if I was asking for help, I was not upholding that image because I was the one that was always helping people. But in reality, I was suffering so much more than I could even fathom. So when we start getting past the pride and the ego and saying, okay, we need help, you'll start being better. Now, how to ask for help, that's a little bit different. We can't expect people to help us if we don't ask for it. And we can't expect people to know if we don't vocalize that. So being able to vocalize that we need the help and not expect people to help us, that's going to help us out. And also going into it without an expectation, right? And saying that, sometimes there's going to be people that we have helped that are not able to help us, and knowing that and being okay with that. I know that I can't ask some of my friends to help me with my recovery and my sobriety because they're still in their active addiction, and that's fine. They're still drinking, they're out there doing their thing. That's fine, and that's okay. I have my avenues that I can go to and the people that I can communicate and talk to. So going into it without expectation. And finally, the last bit before I move on to self-care, or in self-care, is being able to receive that help. There's a difference between asking for help and being able to receive that help. Asking for help, it's good, different. It's difficult, but being able to receive that help, that's a whole nother thing. Being able to get to that point that says, okay, I do need help and I want to get that help. So I'm here and I'm open and I'm available to receive it, is going to be most beneficial too. Making time for relaxation. You always have to take time for yourself. And that's just the rudimentary part of self-care, is making that time to take care of yourself, making that time to make time for yourself. Whether it's 5 minutes a day, whether it's an hour a day, whether it's a small amount of time, you have to make time for yourself. You have to disassociate from everything that happened and just be present with yourself in that moment. All right, talking to a therapist. Like I said, I have been sober for almost 3 years, and I've been in recovery for 3 years. But I've also been in counseling practically my whole life because of things that have happened. I didn't take it seriously until I got sober and I started working my program. And having a counselor has been the most beneficial thing for me, right? Having friends and having family that understand what I'm going through, that's cool. But having a dual diagnosis of addiction and a mental health disorder helped out a lot, because now I can receive the care that I need. Not just that, but also, now I'm not always going to have these problems, right? I'm not always going to have the issues that I was dealing with. I'm in my maintenance phase now, right? So I'm maintaining. I'm working on what I have and what I've learned and what I've developed. But I have to have that person that's keeping me accountable, that's an unbiased source that can say, you're acting like an asshole. And I'd be like, okay, I'm acting like an asshole. Thanks for pointing that out to me. And my counselor does a great job of pointing out when I'm acting like an asshole and being unreasonable. So that's awesome. And it's also a good reason, good source to have a counselor, because they're there. That is their job. Their job is to listen to you and be an unbiased source and give you the best feedback and the best suggestions possible. And if you do need meds for certain things, they can point you in the right direction. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a counselor, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with talking to somebody. We all need somebody. And so, I do enjoy having my counselor. I look forward to my counseling sessions when I can go, or when he's available. So that is my portion of control. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it off to CA whenever she is ready. But I really enjoyed this. I really did. I had a great time doing this.
Hey.
Hello.
Great. Thank you so much.
I'm glad to be a part.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and giving your expertise. So
I'll
let you get back to your night. I really appreciate it, though.
Alrighty. Thank you. I'll see you
you
guys later.
All
right.
All right. So moving on, the next portion of control. Let's all give it like a little round of applause in our houses for Sean. He did a great job. Really appreciate that. And I'm excited to have a new member of the team. So you'll be seeing more of him around. I know I look like a sick Victorian child. Bear with me, people. It's been a long day. So moving into control when it comes to relationships, because yes, control of our own mind is important, but it leaks into our relationships as well. Usually starts as a trauma response. By recognizing this about yourself, you can learn to research healthy control and boundaries, which was mentioned earlier. So, how do you know that you are being too controlling in a relationship? I have 9 steps here, or 9 little tips that will tell you if you're being a little bit too controlling. Now, before I say this, this is not to villainize anybody who might be too controlling in a relationship. Again, it is a trauma response. So the first step in doing better and healing and growing is to recognize when you're doing things that may not be the best in a relationship. So the first step is if you dictate what your partner does, who they're friends with, and more. And yes, this stems into no, you can't be friends with your ex. That is the same thing. If you dictate in any way who your partner can be friends with or who they're around, you're being a bit too controlling. You should have trust and faith in your partner that they will not do some dumb shit. You shouldn't have to go around telling them who they can be friends with. So, second, you're always quick to criticize. You shouldn't be criticizing anything that your partner does. That is your partner. That is who you chose as your mate. That's who you're signing basically half your life away to. So that should be the person that you should least criticize. That should be the person that you're constantly building up in a positive way. Otherwise, you're being a bit too controlling in the relationship and you're being negative and toxic, and nobody wants that around. Third, you're isolating them from their friends and family. It is not realistic to expect your partner to want to talk to you or spend time with you 24/7. Well, I should rephrase that because, of course, you want to spend and talk to your partner 24/7. It's just not realistic or possible all of the time. So keep that in mind when it comes to your partner. They have a life too. They have their own person and they need to see their friends and family, not just you. It is not healthy to spend 24/7 with each other. You need a break. If you always want to know where they are. Now, we tell our partners, hey, I'm going to the store, or hey, I'm going away for the weekend. We do those things out of respect and out of love, not because it's an obligation. When you make it an obligation for your partner to fill you in on where they're going at all times, that is a bit too controlling, and it kind of stems from you need a hobby, okay? Find something to do with your time. If you need to know where your partner is at all times, that means you're not busy enough yourself. You need to work on you then. Next is you want them to focus on you instead of others. It's okay to want your partner to have some focus on you. That is healthy. That is normal. But when it's only you all the time, it's going to get old and it's going to ruin your relationships to start there. No one is that interesting. I'm sorry, ladies and gents. I like to believe that we're all very amazing and super awesome people, which we are. We're not so interesting that our partner should focus on nothing but us. No one is that interesting. I'm sorry. Next is you look through their phone and social media accounts. And this is a big one for me because this has happened in a few relationships of mine and caused a couple of them to end because I am not the one. Let's start there. Do not ask to go through your partner's phone. Do not look through their messages. Do not look through their social media accounts because here's what's going to happen. Number one, you're going to hurt your own feelings because I guarantee they're either talking to someone, even if it's in a friendly way that you might get a little bit jealous of, or they're liking half-naked chicks on Instagram, which is normal for men, ladies. Let it go, okay? It does not mean he does not find you attractive. It does not mean anything about your relationship. That is just what men do. And if you are that insecure about yourself, then that's a self-confidence thing, and you need to work on that. Stop looking through your partner's phone. The last time a partner asked to look through my phone, my response was, and I didn't actually mean it because he still wouldn't have been able to, but when you pay for my phone bill, that's when you can look through my phone. And that was just to be a bitch because as we all know, I am pretty tough. So do not look through your partner's phone. Stop asking. You're only going to end up hurting your feelings or it's going to cause a rift in your relationship because they're going to tell you no and you're going to think they're hiding something when they're not. First of all, women talk a lot of shit in the girl chat, fellas. There's nothing in there for you. Don't ask to look through our phones. Next is you're not okay with them making decisions or doing things without you. Now, this does not mean major decisions like buying a house or moving or things like that. We're talking little decisions. Like if they can't even go food shopping without consulting you first, that's an issue. And that means you're being way too controlling. If I can't make plans with my friends and then tell you about it after, like, hey, on the 27th, I'm going to be doing this with my friends, and that's a problem, you have way too much control in your relationship and you need to dial it back. Next is you ask a lot of questions. It is normal and a respect thing, again, for us to tell our partners things. It's not because they demanded or asked too many questions. If you start asking too many questions about what I'm doing, where I'm going, what time I'll be back, that's a bit much. That's a bit too controlling. And again, dial it back. And the last one is you make them feel guilty. If you make your partner feel guilty for any reason, then you're not being fair to your partner. And I don't agree that this stems to too controlling. That just is toxic. Usually ends up in a narcissistic relationship. Now, for the women's side or men's side that are on the opposite end of the spectrum and maybe in a controlling relationship, my advice to you is this: sit down and talk to your partner. A lot of the times, these are habits, these are behaviors that we've developed that we just don't recognize as toxic or too controlling. It's not always intentional. So sit down and talk to your partner, see what they say about it. Now, if it's like talking to a stone wall, or they're just not validating your feelings in any way, then now you know it's time to move on from the relationship because it's not going to suit you or benefit you in any way. So with that being said, make sure that when you see these red flags, because that's what they are, and I know sometimes, ladies, those red flags look like Six Flags, make sure you talk to your partner first. Don't just end the relationship. But if you feel really low self-esteem, or you start feeling codependency issues in your relationship, like you need to know if they're okay with something you do before you do it, you're in a controlling relationship and you need to put a stop to it, because it's going to continue until you do something about it. So, with that being said, again, most people in controlling relationships, because I know we talked about the self-control with the intrusive thoughts on the first half with our friend Sean, but this was more, the second aspect was more about being in relationships that are controlling. Remember that relationships are not always romantic. They can be friendships or even your family. Now, if you're under 18, that you're going to be in a bit of a controlling situation. There's not really much to do there other than sit down and talk to your parents about it, because you're never going to be able to grow as a person on your own into adult life if you're constantly being micromanaged by your parents. But again, there is no guidebook to parenting, so sit down and talk to them about it. Your parents are not monsters. They will sit down and talk to you. If they don't want to talk to you about it, then unfortunately, you're just going to have to wait it out until you're 18 like the rest of us did. But if you're an adult and you still are being micromanaged by your parents, then maybe it's time to either branch out or take a break and give yourself some space. So, with that being said, this has been another Talk It Out Tuesday. I'm happy to say, for anybody who has seen my live on Instagram earlier, that my phone is now charging again. I don't know what it is about Apple or Verizon this week, but both are out to get me. So they are the villains in my story this week. So, with that being said, next week we will have another topic for you guys, but I will post about it so you know. Or if not, you can always go to mentallykillproject.org and check the calendar. Have a great week. Take back control, and self-care is never canceled. See you next time.